The act of courage. The sun had begun its descent behind the small suburban homes of the neighborhood, casting long shadows and bathing the street in a gentle golden light. It was the end of a typical day, with the sounds of laughter and chatter filling the air as children took advantage of the last few moments of daylight. In the midst of this, Michael Jackson, a 12-year-old boy with skin the color of rich mahogany and eyes that seemed far older than his years, played with a group of neighborhood kids. While they ran around, chasing one another, Michael carried himself with a quiet dignity, as though something much deeper guided his movements and thoughts. Michael was well known in the community as a kid with a heart of gold and a strong sense of justice. He lived with his mother, Lena, in a modest two-bedroom house. Lena was a single mother who worked as a nurse at the local hospital. Her shifts were long and grueling, but she took pride in her work and in providing for her son. Life wasn't always easy for them, but Lena made sure Michael understood that kindness, integrity, and courage were more valuable than material wealth. "It doesn't matter how much you have, Michael," she'd often tell him during their rare shared dinners at the small worn kitchen table. "What matters is what you do with it." Their neighborhood was a blend of different cultures and backgrounds. It was a place where people greeted each other with warm smiles and friendly waves. Neighbors knew one another, and the small community looked out for each other in a way that made them feel like extended family. And despite the occasional disagreements, the neighborhood had a deep sense of unity. Michael, with his mature outlook and deep compassion, fit right in. At school, he was the one who stepped in if a classmate was being bullied, even if it meant getting himself into trouble. He always felt a sense of responsibility to do what was right, something his mother had instilled in him from a young age. One evening, as he was on his way back from the corner store with a few groceries Lena had asked him to pick up, Michael noticed an unsettling scene unfolding. A group of teenage boys, older and much bigger than him, had gathered near the entrance of the store. They were laughing loudly and making rude comments. As he drew closer, Michael could see that their attention was focused on an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, who lived a few blocks away. The Thompsons were well known and well loved in the neighborhood. They were kind and gentle, always taking the time to stop and chat with neighbors or share stories about their younger days. Seeing them now, visibly uncomfortable, and trying to make their way around the group of boys, filled Michael with a mixture of anger and determination. He watched as one of the boys stepped in front of Mrs. Thompson, blocking her path. "Hey, lady, where do you think you're going?" The boy sneered. His friend snickered, egging him on. Mr. Thompson reached out, protectively putting an arm around his wife. But he, too, looked unsure, his eyes darting between the boys and the safety of the store entrance. Without a second thought, Michael marched up to the group. "Hey," he shouted, his voice carrying a firmness that seemed surprising coming from someone his age. The boys turned, looking at him with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Mind your own business, kid," one of them sneered, looking down at him with a smirk. Michael stood his ground, his fists clenched at his sides. "I think it is my business. You guys need to leave them alone," he said, his voice steady. "They're not bothering you, so why are you bothering them?" The ringleader of the group, a tall boy with a cocky grin, stepped forward. "You think you can tell us what to do? You're just a little kid." He laughed, but Michael didn't back down. "Maybe I am," Michael replied, keeping his voice even. "But picking on people who can't defend themselves doesn't make you tough. It just makes you a bully." For a moment, a tense silence hung in the air. The other boys shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another as though unsure whether to continue. Michael's words seemed to hit a nerve, and the ringleader finally scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Come on, guys, this kid's not worth our time," he muttered, motioning for the others to follow him. As the boys walked away, Michael turned to the Thompsons. "Are you both okay?" he asked, his tone softening. Mrs. Thompson smiled, reaching out to pat his arm. "Thank you, Michael," she said, her voice shaky but filled with gratitude. You didn't have to do that, but we're so glad you did." Mr. Thompson nodded, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. "Young man, you've got a good head on your shoulders. We appreciate what you did more than you know. Not many kids your age would have had the courage to stand up like that." Michael shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed by the praise. "It's nothing, really. I don't like seeing people get hurt." After making sure the Thompsons were safe, Michael headed home. He felt a strange mix of emotions, pride for standing up for what he believed was right, and a slight tinge of fear. He knew he'd likely see those boys again, and they probably wouldn't forget the way he'd stood up to them. But as he walked, he reminded himself of his mother's words. Doing the right thing was often hard, but that didn't make it any less important. That night, Michael went to bed feeling hopeful. He knew he'd done something good, something that would make his mother proud. As he lay in bed, he replayed the events of the day in his mind, wondering if he'd see Mr. and Mrs. Thompson at the grocery store again, and if they'd remember the little act of kindness he'd shown them. The next morning, however, brought an unexpected twist. Michael was just finishing breakfast when he noticed a black SUV parked outside his home. He peered out the window, squinting against the bright morning light. The vehicle was unfamiliar, sleek and polished, with dark-tinted windows that prevented him from seeing inside. Curious and a little uneasy, Michael continued watching. He wondered if perhaps it belonged to a new neighbor or a visitor. But as the minutes ticked by, the SUV remained, its engine idling quietly. Finally, the driver's side door opened, and a tall man in a suit stepped out. He adjusted his tie and walked up to Michael's front door, knocking 3 times, each knock echoing in the quiet morning air. Lena appeared beside Michael, her expression one of concern. She glanced down at him, then back at the door. "Stay here," she whispered, giving him a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before heading to answer the door. As she opened it, the man smiled politely. "Good morning, ma'am," he said in a deep, calm voice. "I'm here to speak with Michael. May I come in?" This sets up the tension and the mystery surrounding Michael's courageous act and the appearance of the black SUV. In the next part, we can explore the man's purpose for visiting and how this encounter will lead Michael into a new and unexpected chapter of his life. An unexpected visitor. The man's presence at their doorstep was both unnerving and intriguing. Lena felt a chill run down her spine, but she held her ground, her expression guarded. She knew enough to be cautious, especially when a stranger showed up unannounced asking for her son. Taking a moment to assess the situation, she stood firm in the doorway, shielding Michael behind her. "Why do you want to speak with my son?" Lena's voice held a protective edge, a mother's fierce instinct that warned her to stay on guard. The man, however, maintained a calm demeanor, sensing her wariness. "My name is Mr. Collins," he replied, offering a brief, polite smile. "I work for a community outreach organization, and I heard about the incident at the grocery store yesterday. I wanted to commend Michael personally for his bravery. It's not every day you see such courage, especially from someone so young." Lena raised an eyebrow, glancing back at Michael. She knew about the encounter. Michael had mentioned it over dinner the previous evening, but she hadn't expected it to attract any attention. Her protective instincts softened slightly, though she remained vigilant. She turned to Michael, her eyes questioning, silently asking if he wanted to speak to the man. Michael nodded, curiosity sparking in his eyes. He took a small step forward, now standing beside his mother. "What did you want to talk to me about?" he asked, his tone tentative but steady. Mr. Collins smiled, kneeling slightly so that he was on Michael's eye level. "First of all, I wanted to say thank you, Michael. You did something remarkable. It takes a lot of courage to stand up for others, especially when you're facing people much bigger and older than you. I'm impressed by your sense of justice." Michael's face reddened, but he managed a small smile. "Thank you, sir. I don't like seeing people get hurt. It didn't feel right to just walk away." The man nodded, clearly impressed by Michael's sincerity. That's exactly why I'm here, actually. You see, I work with young people who have a strong sense of justice, like you. We run programs and events to help build leadership skills, encourage community involvement, and foster a sense of responsibility. I came here to ask if you'd be interested in getting involved. Lena glanced at Michael, her brow furrowing slightly. How did you find out where we live, Mr. Collins? She asked, her tone firm. She wasn't one to let her guard down easily, especially when it came to her son. Mr. Collins nodded, as though he'd expected the question. I work closely with local community leaders, and one of them happened to mention Michael's act of kindness yesterday. They shared with me that he's an exceptional young man, so I made a few calls. It's part of my job to identify young people who have the potential to make a positive impact. Lena was still skeptical, but there was something genuine in the man's expression. He seemed earnest, and though his presence had been unexpected, there was no hint of hostility in his demeanor. She looked down at Michael, who was listening intently, clearly intrigued by Mr. Collins' words. Michael, why don't we invite Mr. Collins in for a little while? She said, stepping aside to allow him entry. She still kept a close eye on the man, making it clear she was watching. As they settled around the small, cozy living room, Mr. Collins began to explain his organization in more detail. He spoke about the various programs they ran, from community service projects to leadership workshops. He described how the organization aimed to empower young people to be change makers in their communities, teaching them skills that would help them make a difference. Michael listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. He had always wanted to help people, but he'd never imagined there were organizations out there that focused on training kids to make an impact. The idea filled him with excitement. Michael, Mr. Collins continued, his tone becoming more earnest, we believe that someone like you has the potential to lead others. Your actions have already shown that you're willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. We'd like to invite you to participate in a special program we're starting. It's a leadership program designed specifically for young people who want to make a difference. Michael's heart raced. What kind of things would I be doing? He asked eagerly, leaning forward in his chair. Mr. Collins smiled, clearly pleased by Michael's enthusiasm. You'd be learning about leadership, teamwork, and problem-solving. You'd also get involved in community projects, things like organizing neighborhood cleanups, helping the elderly with household chores, and even planning events that bring people together. But more than that, you'd learn how to inspire others, how to be a role model. You'd be part of a team, working with other young people who share your passion for helping others. Lena watched Michael's face light up, and she felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She had always wanted Michael to be someone who made a positive impact on the world, but she'd never imagined that an opportunity like this would come so suddenly, or from a stranger at their door. Still, she couldn't ignore the excitement in Michael's eyes, the way his shoulders straightened as he listened. She could see that this was something he wanted. After a moment of thought, Lena turned to Mr. Collins. And how much time would this program require? She asked, her tone measured. She worked long hours, and she didn't want Michael to be overwhelmed, especially if it interfered with his schoolwork. We work around school schedules, and the time commitment is flexible, Mr. Collins assured her. It's a few hours a week, mainly on weekends, with occasional special events. And of course, we make sure parents are involved and kept up to date. We want to build a sense of community, so you be a part of this journey too, Ms. Jackson. Lena took a deep breath, her protective instincts wrestling with her desire to see her son grow and thrive. She looked over at Michael, who was practically bouncing in his seat, his eyes filled with excitement and anticipation. Michael, is this something you'd like to do? She asked, wanting to hear it from him. He nodded vigorously, unable to hide his enthusiasm. Yes, Mom. I really want to do this. I want to help people, just like you always taught me. Seeing the determination in his eyes, Lena felt a surge of pride. She knew that if she tried to hold him back, he'd only wonder what might have been. And deep down, She wanted him to have opportunities she never had growing up. "All right," she said finally, smiling at her son. "If this is something you want, then we'll make it work." Michael's face broke into a grin, and he reached over to hug her tightly. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. Mr. Collins smiled, watching the exchange with warmth. "Excellent," he said, rising to his feet. "I'll send over the information, and we'll get started right away. There's a training session this Saturday, and I think Michael will enjoy it. You'll also have a chance to meet some of the other kids who are part of the program." As Mr. Collins headed back to his SUV, Michael watched him go, feeling a thrill of excitement and anticipation. He couldn't believe how quickly things had changed. Just yesterday, he had stood up to a group of bullies because it felt like the right thing to do. And now, an entire new world of possibilities was opening up before him. Lena watched her son's excitement with a soft smile, though she couldn't shake a slight feeling of unease. She trusted Michael, and she trusted that he was ready for this. But as a mother, she couldn't help but worry. She knew how hard the world could be, and she wanted to protect him from it as much as possible. Later that evening, as they sat down to dinner, Michael could barely contain his excitement, chattering on about all the things he hoped to do. He spoke about helping the elderly, organizing community events, and inspiring other kids to stand up for what was right. Lena listened, her heart swelling with pride. She knew that Michael had a kind and courageous spirit, and she was grateful that he was getting an opportunity to put those qualities to use. When Saturday arrived, Michael was up at dawn, too excited to sleep. He dressed quickly, ate a hurried breakfast, and waited impatiently for Mr. Collins to arrive. Lena watched him with a mixture of amusement and nostalgia, remembering a time when she, too, had dreamed of making a difference in the world. As the sleek black SUV pulled up to their house, Michael shot his mother a quick, excited grin before running out to meet Mr. Collins. Lena waved, feeling a pang of bittersweet pride. She knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter in Michael's life, one that would lead him down a path of discovery and growth. She stood in the doorway, watching as the SUV disappeared down the street, her heart filled with hope and a hint of apprehension. Whatever lay ahead, she knew that Michael was ready to face it. He was her son, a young man with a strong sense of right and wrong, a brave heart, and a spirit that refused to back down. And as he embarked on this journey, Lena knew that first steps into the unknown. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, the sky a bright shade of blue that seemed to hold the promise of a new beginning. Michael awoke with a start, his heart pounding with excitement. It was the day he'd been waiting for, his first day in the program Mr. Collins had talked about. He dressed quickly, pulling on his favorite sneakers and a jacket, then ran downstairs where his mom was waiting with a warm breakfast. "Slow down," Lena chuckled, watching him practically inhale his food. "You'll get there early enough, don't worry." Michael grinned sheepishly, slowing his pace just a little. He could hardly contain his excitement. After finishing breakfast, he grabbed his backpack and hugged his mom tightly. "Thanks, Mom. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." She hugged him back, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Be safe, and remember, just be yourself. You've got everything you need right here." She tapped his chest gently, right over his heart. Mr. Collins arrived shortly afterward in his familiar black SUV, greeting both Michael and Lena warmly. Once they were on the road, Mr. Collins handed Michael a small folder. "Inside, you'll find information about the program, a map of our community center, and a list of the activities we'll be doing today." Michael opened the folder, his eyes widening as he scanned the papers. He saw schedules for upcoming workshops, a list of community service projects, and even some information about the other kids he'd be working with. There were names, ages, and brief descriptions of the backgrounds of his new teammates. Each one had a story, just like him. The community center wasn't far, a large, modern building with wide windows and a welcoming entrance. As they pulled up, Michael saw several other kids gathered outside, talking excitedly. Some looked a little nervous, clutching backpacks and shuffling their feet, while others were already laughing and joking around. Michael took a deep breath, feeling the sudden rush of nervousness. But as soon as Mr. Collins stepped out and gave him an encouraging nod, he felt a bit more at ease. "Come on, let's get you introduced," Mr. Collins said, motioning for Michael to follow him. They approached a group of kids standing in a semicircle around a young woman with a clipboard. She was tall and had a warm smile, her curly hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. When she saw Mr. Collins, she waved, then turned her gaze to Michael with a friendly smile. "Hi there. You must be Michael," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Ms. James. I'll be one of your mentors here." Michael shook her hand, trying not to let his nerves show. "It's nice to meet you, Ms. James." She smiled brightly. "We're glad to have you. Today, we're starting with some team-building activities. You'll get to know everyone and learn a bit about what we're all working toward." Ms. James turned to the group of kids. "Okay, everyone. We've got a new face joining us today. This is Michael, and he's going to be part of our program. Let's all welcome him and make sure he feels at home." A chorus of greetings rose from the group, and Michael's heart swelled. He glanced around, taking in the faces of his new teammates. There was Malik, a tall, lanky boy with a wide smile; Carmen, a girl with long braids and bright, curious eyes; and Rosa, a petite girl with a shy smile who looked about his age. As they introduced themselves, Michael began to feel a bit more comfortable. Their first activity was a simple icebreaker. Each person had to share something unique about themselves. When it was Michael's turn, he thought for a moment before speaking. I like helping people," he said, his voice steady. "And I guess I just believe that if you see someone who needs help, you should do something about it." He felt a little self-conscious, but the other kids nodded, a few of them offering small smiles and murmurs of agreement. As the morning went on, they moved through a series of activities designed to build trust and teamwork. They had to work together to solve puzzles, navigate obstacle courses, and even complete a scavenger hunt. Michael found himself laughing and high-fiving his teammates, the initial nerves fading as he became immersed in the challenges. During one of the activities, he was paired with Malik and Carmen. Their task was to cross a small section of the gym using only 3 foam blocks, which they had to pass to one another while balancing. Malik stumbled, nearly dropping a block, but Michael quickly steadied him, helping him regain his balance. "Thanks, man," Malik said, grinning as he handed the block to Carmen. "You're pretty quick." Michael shrugged, feeling a bit embarrassed by the compliment. "Just trying to make sure we don't fall," he replied, smiling. By lunchtime, Michael felt like he'd known his new friends for much longer than a few hours. They gathered in the cafeteria, chatting excitedly about the morning's activities. The mentors joined them, and soon the room was filled with laughter and the sound of shared stories. Ms. James sat down beside Michael, her expression thoughtful. "So, Michael," she said, leaning in slightly, "how are you finding everything so far?" Michael thought for a moment, then nodded. "I really like it," he said, his voice full of enthusiasm. "It's fun working with everyone, and I like that we're doing things that matter." Ms. James smiled, clearly pleased by his response. "That's what we're here for. You know, you remind me of someone I used to know. A young man who had the same drive to help others. He went on to do great things in his community. I think you have that same potential." Her words stuck with him, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just here to play games or make friends. He was here to learn, to grow, and to become someone who could make a difference. After lunch, they moved on to the afternoon session, which focused on community service. Mr. Collins explained that they would be helping to organize a food drive, collecting donations for families in need. Michael's heart quickened as he listened. He'd seen the struggles in his own neighborhood, families working hard just to make ends meet, kids going without lunch some days. The idea that he could do something to help them made him feel a sense of responsibility he hadn't felt before. The team divided into small groups, each assigned different tasks. Michael's group was responsible for creating flyers and brainstorming ways to spread the word. As they worked, Michael's mind raced with ideas. He suggested they put up flyers at local stores and even volunteered to speak at his school to encourage his classmates to get involved. Carmen, who was working beside him, looked over and nodded. "That's a great idea, Michael," she said, her eyes shining with approval. "If everyone helps a little, we can really make a big difference." Michael smiled, feeling the warmth in his chest. He realized that he wasn't just part of a group. He was part of something bigger, something that had the potential to change lives. As they finished their planning and gathered with the other groups, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just an ordinary kid. He was someone who could inspire others, someone who could bring people together. At the end of the day, as the sun began to set, Mr. Collins gathered everyone in the main hall for a closing discussion. He spoke about the importance of community, of coming together to help those in need, and of the power each of them had to make a difference. "You all did amazing work today," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Each of you has a gift, something unique that you bring to the table. And when we combine those gifts, there's nothing we can't accomplish." As he looked around the room, his gaze settled on Michael, who met his eyes with a quiet determination. "Michael," he said, his tone warm, "today, you showed everyone what it means to lead by example. You have the heart of a leader, and we're grateful to have you here." The room erupted in applause, and Michael felt his face flush with pride. He looked over at his teammates, who were smiling and cheering for him, and he felt a deep sense of belonging. This was where he was meant to be. On the ride home, Michael couldn't stop talking, recounting every detail of the day to his mom. Lena listened, smiling as he spoke, her heart swelling with pride. She could see that this experience had already begun to change him, to shape him into someone even stronger and more compassionate. That night, as Michael lay in bed, he felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that this was only the beginning of his journey, that there would be challenges ahead and obstacles to overcome. But he was ready for it. He'd found his place, his purpose, and he was determined to make a difference. As he drifted off to sleep, he imagined the lives he could touch, the people he could help, and the community he could build. And in that quiet moment, with the moonlight filtering through his window, Michael knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, a heart for the community. The following week, Michael found himself buzzing with excitement as he prepared for the upcoming food drive. He had spent nearly every free moment talking to his friends and neighbors, rallying support for the cause. The goal was simple: to collect as much non-perishable food as possible and distribute it to families in need around their community. It was the first real challenge for Michael and his new friends, and he was determined to give it his all. On Saturday morning, he arrived at the community center to find the other kids already there, setting up tables and organizing boxes. Ms. James and Mr. Collins were directing the efforts, and the energy in the room was contagious. Michael could feel the shared sense of purpose among everyone there, an unspoken agreement that what they were doing mattered. "Hey, Michael." Carmen waved him over as he entered. She was standing by a large table stacked with boxes and canned goods. "Can you help us sort these? We're organizing everything by type, so it'll be easier to pack." "Of course," Michael replied, rolling up his sleeves. He joined Carmen and the others, and soon they were working in sync, chatting and laughing as they organized the donations. Throughout the morning, families, neighbors, and local businesses trickled in, dropping off bags of rice, canned vegetables, pasta, and other essentials. Some brought grocery bags overflowing with goods, while others placed small but meaningful contributions into the boxes. Michael watched with growing admiration, realizing how powerful a community could be when people came together. As he stacked cans and organized the goods, an older woman approached him, her face lined with years of experience. She wore a faded yellow scarf and had a gentle, grandmotherly smile. In her hands, she clutched a small bag containing a few cans of soup and a box of crackers. "I'm sorry I couldn't bring more," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I hope it helps." Michael felt a lump in his throat as he accepted her offering. He could tell that the woman had given all she could. "Thank you so much," he said, giving her a warm smile. "Every little bit counts, and what you've given is going to help someone in need. That's what matters." The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded, smiling back at him. "You're a good boy," she said, reaching out to pat his hand. "The world needs more young people like you." As she walked away, Michael watched her go, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. It was moments like this that made him realize just how meaningful their work was. This wasn't just about food. It was about people coming together to support one another, each contribution a testament to the kindness that still existed in the world. By noon, the center was bustling with activity. They had collected more food than they had expected, and the tables were piled high with donations. Michael and his friends worked tirelessly, sorting and packing, fueled by the knowledge that they were making a real difference. Ms. James gathered the group together, her face glowing with pride. "Everyone, I just want to say how incredible this is. Look around. This is the result of your hard work and the kindness of this community. Because of you, families will have food on their tables this week. That's something to be proud of." The group cheered, and Michael felt a warmth spread through his chest. He looked around at his friends, their faces flushed with pride and accomplishment. He knew that they had done something important, something that would leave a lasting impact on the lives of those they were helping. After a quick lunch, they loaded the boxes into vans and prepared to deliver the donations. Michael was assigned to a group with Carmen and Malik, and they climbed into one of the vans, ready to set out. The first stop was a small apartment complex on the outskirts of town, where several families had signed up to receive food assistance. As they pulled up to the complex, Michael noticed a group of children playing outside, their clothes worn but their faces filled with joy. He stepped out of the van, a box of food in his arms, and made his way to the door of the first apartment on their list. A woman answered, a look of surprise and relief spreading across her face as she saw the box he was carrying. "Thank you so much," she said, reaching out to take the box from him. "I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids this week. This means more than you know." Michael smiled, feeling the deep sense of satisfaction. "We're happy to help," he replied, glancing over at the kids who were watching from the doorway. He gave them a small wave, and they waved back, their eyes bright with curiosity. As they continued their deliveries, Michael was struck by the gratitude and relief he saw in the faces of the people they met. Each interaction reinforced the importance of what they were doing, and he felt a newfound respect for the power of kindness and generosity. These were people who, despite their struggles, remained hopeful, their spirits unbroken by hardship. At one stop, an elderly man answered the door, leaning on a cane as he looked at the group. His apartment was small and modest, and Michael could see that he lived alone. As they handed him the box, the man's eyes filled with tears, and he placed a trembling hand on Michael's shoulder. "You kids are a blessing," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "It's been a hard year, and I wasn't sure how I was going to make it through. Thank you for bringing me hope." Michael felt a lump rise in his throat, and he swallowed hard, fighting back his own tears. He realized that this man, like so many others they had helped that day, wasn't just in need of food. He was in need of connection, of a reminder that he wasn't alone. In that moment, Michael understood that their mission was about more than just providing for physical needs. It was about lifting people's spirits, reminding them that they were part of a community that cared. As they returned to the center that afternoon, the group was quiet, each person reflecting on the day's experiences. Michael felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before, a feeling that went beyond words. He knew that this was only the beginning, that there were countless others who needed help, who needed to feel seen and valued. Back at the center, Mr. Collins and Ms. James gathered everyone together for a debriefing. They shared stories from their deliveries, and Michael listened as his friends spoke about the people they had met, the gratitude they had witnessed. It was clear that the day had left a lasting impact on everyone, and Michael felt a surge of pride as he realized that he was part of something truly special. Today was just the beginning, Mr. Collins said, his voice filled with conviction. There are so many people in our community who need help, who need to know that they're not alone. And that's where you come in. You have the power to make a difference, to change lives, one act of kindness at a time. As they wrapped up for the day, Michael felt a sense of purpose settle deep within him. He knew that this was what he wanted to do, to help others, to bring hope to those who needed it most. He looked around at his friends, at Ms. James and Mr. Collins, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had found a place where he belonged, a place where he could make a real impact. On the ride home, Michael was quiet, lost in thought. Lena glanced over at him, sensing that something had changed. "How was it, Michael?" she asked, her voice gentle. He looked over at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "It was amazing, Mom. I never realized how much people need each other. I want to keep doing this. I want to help as many people as I can." Lena reached over, giving his hand a squeeze. "I'm so proud of you, Michael. You're becoming the kind of person who can make a real difference." That night, as he lay in bed, Michael thought about the people he had met, the stories he had heard. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, that helping others wasn't always easy. But he also knew that it was worth it, that the rewards went beyond anything he had ever imagined. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a renewed sense of determination. He was ready to face whatever came next, to continue his journey as a force for good in the world. And with each new day, he would carry with him the lessons he had learned, the memories of the lives he had touched, and the knowledge that he was part of something bigger than himself, a community bound by compassion, kindness, and the belief that together they could make a difference. Rising to the challenge. The weeks that followed the food drive were a whirlwind for Michael and his friends. Encouraged by their success, the group began taking on more projects. With the guidance of Mr. Collins and Ms. James, they organized neighborhood cleanups, volunteered at the local shelter, and even started tutoring sessions for younger kids who needed help with schoolwork. Michael found himself thriving, his confidence growing with each new task. However, as the projects became larger, so did the challenges. One afternoon, Mr. Collins called a meeting at the community center, his face unusually serious. Michael and his friends gathered around, sensing that something was different. "Everyone," Mr. Collins began, his voice steady but filled with urgency, "we have an important new task. Recently, we've learned that a family in our community is facing eviction. They're behind on rent and are struggling to make ends meet. We have a chance to help them, but it's going to require a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment." The group fell silent, the weight of Mr. Collins' words settling heavily over them. Michael glanced around at his friends, seeing a mix of concern and determination on their faces. He knew that helping this family would be different from their previous projects. It was a matter of urgency, a situation where their efforts could mean the difference between a family having a home or being out on the streets. Ms. James stepped forward, a compassionate smile on her face. "We've talked with the landlord, and he's agreed to give the family a month to raise the funds they need. Our job is to organize a fundraiser and collect donations from the community. We'll need every ounce of energy and creativity we've got to pull this off." Michael felt a surge of determination. He could sense the importance of this mission, the real-life stakes that went beyond anything he'd encountered before. "We can do this," he said, his voice firm. "We've already done so much for the community. This is our chance to really make a difference." Carmen nodded, a resolute look in her eyes. "Yeah, we're not just kids anymore. We're part of something bigger, and we can't let this family down." The group spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming ideas. They decided on a three-pronged approach: a community car wash, a bake sale, and a talent show. Each event would serve as an opportunity to raise money, and they would host them over the next 2 weekends. Michael volunteered to help with the car wash, excited by the prospect of doing something hands-on. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Collins clapped Michael on the shoulder. "I know this is a big responsibility, but I believe in you. You've shown so much heart, Michael, and I have no doubt that you can lead this effort." Michael felt a swell of pride and nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Collins. I'll do my best." The following Saturday, Michael and his friends set up the car wash in the parking lot of a local supermarket. They had buckets of soapy water, sponges, and plenty of towels, and Carmen had even made a colorful sign that read, "Save a Family's Home. Community Car Wash." As the first cars rolled in, Michael and Malik jumped into action, scrubbing and rinsing with enthusiasm. They laughed and joked, getting splashed and soaked. But each car that drove away meant more donations and a step closer to their goal. People from the neighborhood stopped by, many of them leaving generous contributions. An older gentleman in a beat-up pickup truck pulled up, rolling down his window as Michael approached. "What's all this about, young man?" he asked, looking curiously at the sign. "We're raising money to help a family avoid eviction," Michael explained, a sense of purpose in his voice. "Every dollar helps." The man nodded thoughtfully, reaching into his wallet. He handed Michael a $50 bill, a warm smile spreading across his face. "It's good to see young folks out here doing something positive. You're doing a great thing, kid. Keep it up." Michael thanked him, watching as the truck pulled away. The kindness of strangers moved him, reinforcing his belief in the goodness of people. But as the day went on, he began to feel the weight of the responsibility they had taken on. Would they really be able to raise enough money in time? The car wash ended with a total of nearly $500 raised, and Michael and his friends celebrated, exhausted but encouraged by the support they had received. But as he counted the money later that evening, Michael realized just how far they still had to go. They needed several $1,000s to cover the family's rent and utilities. The reality of the challenge sank in, and he felt a flicker of doubt. The following week, they held the bake sale. Lena and some of the other parents helped bake cookies, brownies, and cupcakes, and Michael and his friends set up a booth in the town square. Business was brisk, and the booth quickly attracted a crowd. People seemed eager to support their cause, and many of them praised the kids for their efforts. By the end of the day, they had raised an additional $700, bringing their total to just over $1,200. It was a good start, but still not enough. As they packed up, Michael found himself feeling frustrated. They were doing everything they could, but the amount they needed seemed daunting. Would they be able to pull this off? He voiced his concerns to Ms. James, who listened with a calm expression. "Michael," she said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, "you're doing amazing work. Sometimes, when we take on big challenges, it can feel like we're not making enough progress. But remember, every effort counts, and sometimes, unexpected help comes when we least expect it." Michael nodded, taking her words to heart. He knew she was right, but the pressure was starting to weigh on him. He wanted so badly to succeed, to prove that they could make a real difference. The last event was the talent show, and he hoped it would be the breakthrough they needed. On the night of the talent show, the community center was packed. Michael's friends took turns performing, and the room was filled with laughter and applause. Malik played a spirited rendition of a popular song on his guitar, Carmen performed a beautiful dance, and Rosa recited a heartful poem. Michael had never performed in front of a crowd before, but he had decided to sing a song that meant a lot to him, one about hope, resilience, and the power of coming together. As he stepped onto the stage, his heart pounded, but he drew strength from the people around him. He sang with all his heart, his voice filling the room, and when he finished, the audience erupted into applause. He felt a warmth spread through him, knowing that he had shared a piece of himself with everyone there. At the end of the show, Mr. Collins took the stage, announcing that they had raised over $3,000 from donations that night. The total amount, combined with the funds from the car wash and bake sale, had reached nearly $5,000, enough to cover the family's rent and keep them in their home. The room burst into cheers, and Michael found himself swept up in a wave of hugs and high fives from his friends. He felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had ever known. They had done it. They had come together, worked hard, and achieved something that seemed impossible. After the event, as they cleaned up, Michael felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had learned so much, not only about the power of community, but also about the strength within himself. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but he also knew that he could face them with courage and the support of his friends. On the ride home, Lena looked over at him, her eyes filled with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Michael," she said softly. "You're not just making a difference. You're becoming someone who can lead others, who can inspire change." Michael smiled, feeling a quiet confidence take root within him. He knew that this was only the beginning, that there were so many more people who needed help, who needed someone to stand up for them. And he was ready. He had found his purpose, his place in the world, and he knew that he would carry this experience with him for the rest of his life. That night, as he lay in bed, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had learned that making a difference wasn't always easy, that it took hard work, resilience, and sometimes a leap of faith. But he also knew that the rewards were worth it, that the joy of helping others was something that could never be measured. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a renewed sense of determination. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to continue his journey as a force for good in the world. For he had discovered that the true power of kindness lay not in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday acts that, when combined, could change lives. The path forward. The weeks after the talent show were a whirlwind of gratitude, community appreciation, and newfound purpose for Michael. The family they'd helped had expressed their deep thanks to him and his friends, moved to tears by the outpouring of support. Knowing they could stay in their home, they had regained hope for the future, and that was something that touched Michael deeply. Word spread around town about the group's achievements, and people began to see Michael as more than just a neighborhood kid. He was becoming a young leader, someone with the courage to tackle real-world issues and the heart to make a difference. Mr. Collins had even mentioned nominating him for a local community service award. But for Michael, the greatest reward was seeing the relief on the faces of the family they had helped and feeling the sense of unity that their efforts had inspired in the community. One Saturday morning, Mr. Collins invited Michael to the community center for a special meeting. When Michael arrived, he found a group of people waiting, including Ms. James, some town council members, and a few other community leaders. He felt a mix of excitement and nerves, wondering what was going on. "Michael," Mr. Collins began, a proud smile on his face, "we've been talking, and we'd like to invite you to join the Community Youth Leadership Board. It's a new initiative to get young people like you involved in solving some of the challenges our town faces. You've already proven that you have the heart and the drive for this kind of work, and we believe you'd be a great addition to the team." Michael felt a rush of excitement. He hadn't expected this opportunity, but he knew it was exactly what he wanted. He looked at Mr. Collins, then at the others in the room, and nodded. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I'd love to be part of it." As the meeting continued, they discussed various projects that the board would focus on, ranging from environmental cleanups to creating safe spaces for kids in the community. Michael listened intently, already imagining the ways he could contribute. He knew that there would be new challenges, but he also felt a newfound confidence in his ability to tackle them. That evening, as Michael walked home, he thought about how much his life had changed in just a few short months. He had gone from being a regular kid with no real plans beyond his daily routine to someone with a purpose, someone who could make a real impact. And as he walked, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him here. When he arrived home, he found Lena waiting for him, a proud smile on her face. She had heard about the invitation to join the leadership board, and she hugged him tightly. "I always knew you'd do great things, Michael," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You're making a difference, not just in the community but in people's lives. I'm so proud of you." Michael hugged her back, feeling a surge of gratitude for everything she had taught him. He knew that her lessons about kindness, justice, and standing up for what was right had shaped him into the person he was becoming. And he felt a deep sense of responsibility to carry those values forward, to continue the work they had started together. Over the next few months, Michael threw himself into his new role with energy and enthusiasm. He attended board meetings, brainstormed new initiatives, and even spoke at a town hall meeting about the importance of youth involvement in community service. He was nervous at first, but as he looked out at the faces in the crowd, he felt a surge of confidence. This was his chance to share his passion, to inspire others to get involved. "We all have the power to make a difference," he said, his voice steady. "It doesn't matter how old you are or where you come from. What matters is that you care and that you're willing to take action. I've seen firsthand how kindness can change lives, and I believe that if we work together, we can create a community where everyone feels supported and valued." The audience erupted in applause, and Michael felt a warmth spread through him. He had found his voice, and he was using it to bring people together. It was a feeling he couldn't quite put into words, but he knew it was something he wanted to experience again and again. As the months passed, Michael continued to work with the leadership board, tackling new projects and finding creative solutions to the challenges they faced. He and his friends organized after-school programs for younger kids, providing a safe space for them to learn and grow. They started a mentorship program, pairing high school students with younger kids who needed guidance and support. Michael saw firsthand the impact that these efforts had on the community, and he knew that they were making a real difference. One day, he received a letter from the family they had helped with the eviction crisis. It was a heartfelt note, expressing their gratitude and sharing how their lives had changed since the community had come together to support them. They wrote about the new jobs they had found, the hope they felt for the future, and the sense of security they had regained. Michael read the letter with tears in his eyes, feeling the deep sense of fulfillment. He kept the letter in a small box on his desk, a reminder of why he had started this journey and the impact that one act of kindness could have. It was a symbol of the power of community, of the way people could come together to lift each other up. And as he looked at the letter, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a commitment to continue the work he had begun. One day, as he was walking home from a meeting at the community center, Michael noticed a group of kids playing on a rundown basketball court. The pavement was cracked, the hoops were rusty, and the lines were faded. He remembered playing on that court when he was younger, and he felt a pang of sadness. He knew that many kids in the neighborhood used the court, but it hadn't been maintained in years. An idea began to form in his mind, and by the time he reached home, he was already making plans. He brought the idea to the leadership board, and they quickly got to work. They organized fundraisers, reached out to local businesses for donations, and even got some of the town's artists involved to create murals on the surrounding walls. It was a community effort, and as the project came together, Michael felt a sense of pride that was beyond anything he had ever felt before. When the court was finally complete, they held a grand opening ceremony, inviting the whole neighborhood to celebrate. Kids and families gathered around, their faces filled with excitement as they saw the freshly painted lines, the brand new hoops, and the colorful murals depicting scenes of hope, unity, and strength. Michael looked around at the faces in the crowd, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. They had created something beautiful, something that would serve the community for years to come. As the sun set, Michael stood on the sidelines, watching as kids ran across the court, laughing and playing with abandon. He felt a sense of peace, a quiet joy that filled him from within. He knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, that he had found his purpose in life. Lena came up beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done so much, Michael," she said, her voice filled with pride. "I hope you know how proud I am of you." Michael smiled, feeling the deep gratitude for everything she had taught him. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom," he replied, his voice soft. "You're the one who taught me to care, to believe in the power of kindness." They stood together, watching the kids play, and Michael felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He knew that there would always be challenges ahead, that the work of building a better community was never truly done. But he also knew that he was ready for whatever came next, that he had the strength, the courage, and the support he needed to make a difference. As the evening turned to dusk, Michael looked out at the neighborhood, feeling a sense of belonging that went beyond words. He had found his place, his purpose, and he knew that he would carry this journey with him for the rest of his life. For he had learned that the true power of change lay not in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday acts of kindness that, when combined, could transform a community and a world. And as he walked home that night, he felt a quiet resolve take root within him. He was ready to continue his journey, to face whatever challenges lay ahead, and to keep making a difference, one step at a time. For he knew that the path of kindness was one that would lead him to a future filled with hope, purpose, and a world made better by the power of compassion. Thank you for journeying through Michael's story. This is the conclusion, but Michael's commitment to making a difference ensures that his work will continue, inspiring those around him to find the power of kindness and community as he has. You said,